Hello everyone, welcome to kodEdge. In today's video, we will explore how to set up Amazon MSK as an event source for Lambda function. This means we will attach a Lambda function as a consumer for Kafka event. So whenever Kafka receive a message, it will automatically trigger the Lambda function. Let's understand the architecture for our setup. In AWS Cloud, we will create custom VPC. Within the VPC, we will set up two AGs with both public and private subnet. To enable internet access for the components in the private subnet, we will deploy NAT gateway in one of the public subnet. Next, we will create Amazon MSK cluster in private subnet. For our demonstration, we will configure it with two brokers. Following this, we will launch EC2 instance on the public subnet. This instance will act as a client for Kafka, allowing us to create topics and produce messages for the Kafka. To allow the EC2 instance to interact with Kafka, we will attach an IAM role to the EC2 instance. This role will authorize the instance to create topics and produce messages within the Kafka. Subsequently, we will create a Lambda function. This Lambda function will also require execution role, which will allow Kafka to trigger the Lambda function. Once this setup is complete, whenever we send event from the EC2 client to Kafka, Kafka will automatically trigger the Lambda function. The Lambda function will then process the Kafka event. Let's move on to the demonstration. In AWS console, let's search for the VPC. And here we will launch the custom VPC. So I'm selecting VPC and more option here. And I'm giving name as a MSK YT VPC. Then I'm keeping the CIDR block as it is, that is 10.0.0.0/16. Tenancy I'm keeping as a default one. Availability zones I'm selecting as a 2. Number of public subnets I'm selecting as a 2. Then private subnet will be 2. Then we will require NAT gateway. So I'm selecting one NAT gateway in one of the AZ. And VPC endpoints, so we are not using VPC endpoints for our demonstration. So I'm keeping this DNS option enabled, and let's click on the create VPC. So it will take around 10 minutes to create the VPC. Okay, so VPC is created. Let me click on the view VPC button. So let's select the VPC that we have just created, and let me click on the subnets. Let me refresh it. Here you can see it has created two public subnet and two private subnet. Okay, now let's search for the MSK. And let's click on the create cluster. So here I'm selecting custom create option, and let's give the name demo MSK cluster. So cluster type I'm selecting as a provision 1. Okay. So here I'm selecting Kafka version as a recommended, that is 3.5.1. Then let's select the broker. So broker type I'm selecting as a Kafka T3 small for demonstration purpose. The number of zones I am selecting as a 2. Then brokers per zone I am selecting as a 1. Storage I am keeping as 1 GB as we are doing setup for the demonstration purpose. Then other option I am keeping the same. Let's click on the next. So here select the VPC that we have just created. So this is the VPC that we have created. So here you need to select the zone. So let me go back into the VPC. So here we have created the subnet in AP South 1A and 1B zone. Okay, so let's select the same zone. So here I am selecting AP South 1A, and from this zone I am selecting private subnet. Then second zone will be AP South 1B, and from this zone I am selecting second private subnet. Then public access will be off. Then let's select the security group, that is default one. Okay, so you can create separate security group for Kafka, then separate security group for EC2 instance. But for our demonstration, I am keeping the same security group for the both the component. Let's click on the next. So here I am selecting access control method as a IAM role based authentication. Then let's keep the other option as a default one and click on the next. So here I am selecting monitoring as a basic one, and I'm keeping all other option as a default one. and click on the next. So this is the summary for our cluster. So this is the name of our cluster. Cluster type will be provision 1. This is the Apache Kafka version, that is 3.5.1. Then this is our broker size, that is Kafka T3 small, and we are creating one broker per zone. So this is our EBS storage size. Okay, then this is network settings. So we have two zones. These are private subnet, and this is our security group. Then we are enabling IAM role-based authentication for our Kafka, and let's click on the create cluster. So it is going to take around 15 to 20 minutes to create the cluster. Till the time we will create the IAM policy for our EC2 instance. So let's search for the IAM. And here click on the policies and click on the create policy. So let's select the service. So we are creating policy for the EC2. So let's select the EC2 and click on the JSON here, and let me copy paste the policy. So this is the policy we are going to use for the EC2 instance. So it is allowing creating the topic, then altering the cluster, then describing the topic, then we are allowing all update operation, and this is the connection permission. So you can modify this permission as per your requirement. So I'm using generalized policy for the EC2 instance. Okay, so let's click on the next. So let me give the name as MSK EC2 policy. So you can give any name as per your requirement. And here you can see the summary of the policy. Let's click on the create policy. Okay, so EC2 instance policy is created. Now let's click on the roles and let's click on the create role. And here select the entity type as a AWS service. Select the service as a EC2. Then click on the next. And search for the policy that we have just created. So name we used for the policy was MSK EC2 policy. Okay, so this is the policy we just created, right? Just select that policy, click on the next, and here we will assign the name for the role. So I'm giving name as a MSK EC2 role. You can give any name as per your requirement, and let's click on the create role. Okay, EC2 role is created. Now next we will create the EC2 instance. So let's search for the EC2 and let's click on the launch instance. So let's give the name for the EC2 instance. So here I'm giving name as a MSK client. Then I'm selecting free tier eligible AMI. Then I'm selecting instance type as a T2 micro, which is also free tier eligible. Then let's create a new key pair. So here I'm giving key pair name as a EC2 key. And let's click on the create key pair. Let's click on the edit on the network setting. So this is the default VPC. Let's select the VPC that we have just created. And let's deploy this EC2 instance in one of the public subnet. Okay. Then let's allow auto assign public IP. And let's select the existing security group that we use for the Kafka cluster. So this was the security group that we use for the Kafka cluster. So I am selecting the same security group here. And let's click on advanced detail. And here in the IAM instance profile section, let's select the role that we have just created, that is MSK EC2 role. And let's keep all other options as a default one. And let's click on the launch instance. Okay, so the instance is getting launched. Let me click on the instances. So if we click on the instance here, and let's go into the security, and let's click on the security group from here. Okay, so this is the security group for our EC2 instance. Let's click on the edit inbound rule. Let me delete this rule and we'll allow access to all traffic from anywhere. Let me click on the save rule So this is the same security group we are using for the Kafka cluster as well. So let me go back into the instances. Now next what we will do, we will install the Kafka client library on this EC2 instance. Okay, so for that purpose, you can connect to this EC2 instance from this option, that is connect, that is allowing from the AWS console, or you can connect to EC2 instance from your desktop as well. So I'm preferring to connect from the console itself. So let me click on the connect, and let's select the username as EC2 user, and let's click on the connect. So let me clear the window. So you can find all the steps to install the Kafka client from the AWS documentation itself. Okay, so I'm going to follow this document only. So first step is to install the Java on the EC2 instance. So let's copy this command, execute that command in the terminal. Okay, so it is completed. You can verify your Java version using Java version. Okay, so you can see we have installed the OpenJDK 11 version. Now let's see the next command. So next command is to install the Apache Kafka client. So this command is to download the Apache Kafka, and in this command you can see we require to replace this MSK version. So let's see what version we are using for the MSK. So we are using 3.5.1. Okay, so let's execute this command. I have already created this command. So you can see I have replaced that version with 3.5.1. So let's execute this command. So you can see it has downloaded the tar file. So let's extract this tar file. So let's find the command. So this is the command, extract the tar file. And here as well, you will require to replace the cluster version. Okay, so I have already prepared this command. So let me execute that command. So I have replaced that version with 3.5.1. Okay, so it has extracted that tar file. So this is the file that it has extracted. Let me clear the window. Now let's find the next command. Now next command is to download the Amazon MSK IAM jar file. So let's copy this command, and what they are saying, we need to go into this libs directory in the Kafka directory. Okay, so let me go into the terminal. So this is our directory. So let me cd into this directory, and in this directory we need to cd into the libs directory. Okay, and in this libs directory we need to execute this command. So let me copy this command, and let's execute this command. Now let's find the next command. Next command, it is saying to go into this bin directory and create this property file. Okay, so let me copy this property file, and let's create a new file here. So first cd into this bin directory, and here I am using vi editor to create this client.properties file. So let me copy this name, that is client.properties, and here I am clicking I button to edit the file, and let's copy paste that property file content. Now to save this file, let's click on escape :wq. To view the file, you can write command cat, then client.properties. Okay, so this is the client.properties file that we have just created. Okay, so our EC2 instance is ready to create the topic and to produce the message in the Kafka cluster. So let's go back into the cluster and let's see it is created or not. So it is still creating the cluster, and it is going to take up to 15 minutes. So let's wait for some time. Okay, so our cluster is created. Now if you go into the properties, and here if you see in the broker section, you can see the broker details here, and here you can find the endpoint for the brokers. So let's go back into the terminal. So here we will execute one command to get the brokers list and their endpoints. So it will list the same broker that you saw here in the broker details section. So let's execute this command. I already have that command. So this is the command, that is AWS Kafka get bootstrap brokers -- cluster ARN. You need to attach the cluster ARN to this command. So let's go back into the cluster, and here you can find the cluster ARN. So just copy this ARN and attach that ARN to this command, and let's execute this command. So this is the list of broker endpoints URL. So just copy this URL and let me open the editor, and here I'm just pasting that URL to execute in the next command. So let me go back into the AWS documentation, and here next command is to create the topic in the Kafka cluster. Okay, so just copy this command and let's go back into the editor and we will prepare our command. So here you can see in the bootstrap server string, we need to replace this with the broker URL. And here you need to replace this path with your Kafka installation. So let me go back into the terminal and let's execute the command pwd and just copy this path and just replace that path with this string. So what this command is going to do, this command is going to execute this file, that is kafka topic.sh, and it is going to create topic using this URL, that is a broker URL, and it is going to use that client.properties file that we have just created, and replication factor I am keeping it as a 2, partitions I am using as a 1, and topic name will be MSK tutorial topic. So you can use any name as per your requirement. I am just using tutorial topic name here, and let's execute this command from the terminal. Okay, so you can see our topic is created. Now in case if you get any issue while creating this topic, just recheck your IAM role for your EC2 instance. Now next what we will do, we will test our cluster. We will send message to Kafka and we will consume that message from this EC2 instance only. So let me open one more terminal. So let's click on the connect here. Click on the connect. So it will launch new terminal. So we will use this terminal for the consuming the Kafka message. So let me cd into the Kafka installation. So let's cd into the bin folder. So this terminal we will use to consume the message, and this terminal we will use to produce the message. So let me open the editor, and this is the command to produce the message. So let's replace this Kafka installation path with the path that we have just used. Okay, so this is our installation folder, and for this we are going to use this file, that is Kafka console producer.sh file. Then in the broker list we need to replace with the actual broker list. Okay, and this command is also going to use client.properties file. Then this is the topic name that we are going to use. So let's execute this command from the terminal. So let's execute this command. Now next, on the second terminal, we will execute the command for the consumer. So let's prepare the command for the consumer. So this is the command for the consumer. So let me replace with the installation path. Then our broker list. So this is our broker list. Then this command is also going to use client.property file. This is the topic name, and it is going to read message from the beginning. Okay, so let's copy this command and execute from the consumer terminal. So let's send the message from the producer terminal. So I'm sending message as a hi. Let's see in the second terminal. So you can see we have received the message from the Kafka. Let's send the second message. This is message for YT demo. And you can see this message get consumed from the consumer terminal. Okay, that means our cluster is working properly. Now next what we'll do, we'll create a Lambda function, and whenever we send message to the Kafka, Kafka will trigger our Lambda function. So let's search for the Lambda. and let's click on the create function. So I'm giving name as a MSK Lambda. Then runtime I'm selecting as a Node.js. Then let's go into the advanced setting, and here just enable this VPC option. So what it will do, it will connect your function to VPC to access the private resources, right? And we have deployed our cluster into the private subnet. So let's select the VPC. So this is the VPC that we have created, right? Then let's select the subnet. So let's select the private subnet in which we have deployed our cluster. Then let's select the security group that we use for the cluster. So this is the same security group we have used for the cluster. Okay, and let's click on the create function. Okay, so our function is created. Let's go into the configuration and we will attach certain permission. So let's click on the role name and this execution role option here. And let's click on the add permission and attach policy. And let's search for the Lambda MSK. So we will attach this AWS Lambda MSK execution role. And let's click on the add permission. So you can see it has attached to this Lambda function. What it will do? It will allow certain permission related to the Kafka. Okay. Then we will require to attach one more policy to this Lambda function. So let's click on the add permission here and click on the create inline policy. So let's click on the JSON, and I have already prepared that policy. So let me copy paste that policy. So what this policy is doing, this policy attaching additional permission. Okay. So whenever you will try this setup, just make sure to replace this ARN with your Kafka cluster ARN. So here I am using my Kafka cluster ARN. In your case, just replace this ARN with your Kafka cluster ARN and just click on the next. So policy name I am giving as a Lambda Kafka or MSK policy. Okay, so you can give any name as per your requirement, and this is attaching multiple permission here. You can see, and click on the create policy. Okay, so it has attached the policy to our Lambda function. If you go back into the Lambda and let's click on this refresh button, and here you can see it has attached the policy related to the Kafka. And if you click on the by action, so here you can see the summary of the action. Now next step is to write the code to consume the message from the Kafka. So let's go into the code section and let me remove this code. And this is the code to consume the message from the Kafka. So let's understand what this code is doing. So let me go into the AWS documentation. So this is a sample event that we receive from the Kafka cluster. Okay, now let's go back into the code. So first what we are doing, we are iterating through the keys. Okay, so if you go into the event has records. Okay, so we are iterating through these records. Next, what we are doing, we are just logging that key from this record. Next, we are using map function and we are using records from this event. Okay, so if you go into the example, this is the record, and from this record we need to extract this key and the value. Okay, so we need to decode this key and the value using base 64 format. Okay, so let me go back into the code. So here what we are doing, we are just logging that record. Then we are using buffer.from function, and here we are passing record.value, and we are converting that value using base 64. Okay, and we are just logging that message again. So let's deploy this code and let's copy this event from here and let's click on the test. Let me give as a test event and let me replace with the actual example. Okay, let's click on the save and let's click on the test. Now here in the log you can see it has logged the key, that is my topic -0. Now if you go into the example, so this is the key in the records section. Next it is logging the record from the event. Next it is logging the message, that is hello, this is a test. So this is the message. So this is the message and it is decoding that message using base 64, and this is the actual message, that is hello, this is the test. So our function is working correctly. Now next we will add the trigger. So if you see here, there is an option to add the trigger. So let's click on the add trigger option here, and let's select the source. So source, let's search for the MSK. Let's give the MSK cluster. So this is the demo MSK cluster that we have just created. Then authentication, so I'm keeping it as a blank. Then I'm keeping all other options as a default one. So starting position, I'm selecting as a latest one. Let's give the topic name, and let's click on the add button. Now let's go into the configuration. Let's expand the details. And here you can see state is creating. So let's wait for 2-3 minutes. Now you can see state is enabled. And here you can see last processing result, that is no record process. And this is the topic name. This is the starting position. Now next, let's send the message from the EC2 instance. So let me click on the monitor here. And let me click on the view CloudWatch logs. And here you will see all the logs. So let me delete this log. Okay. Now let's send the message from the EC2 instance. So this is our producer, right? So let's send the message. This is message for Lambda. Let's go back into the CloudWatch and let's refresh it. Let's wait for a minute. Here you can see it has created new log. And let's see. So this is our key, that is MSK tutorial topic -0. Then this is our record. Okay. So this is our value. And you can see this is our message, that is this is message for Lambda. Okay. Now if you go back into the Lambda, and if you go into the configuration, and here you can see last processing result is okay. Okay. Let's send one more message. This is new message for YT demo. And let's go back into the CloudWatch. Let me refresh it. Now here you can see we have received the new message. And if you click on the message, this is the message for YT demo, right? That means our setup is working correctly. So what we did for this setup, we first created the cluster, then we created the EC2 instance, then we attached the IAM role for this EC2 instance. After that, we test our setup using EC2 instance. For that purpose, we installed the Kafka client library. Then we created the topic. After that, we sent the message. After that, we created the Lambda function. For this as well, we attached some permissions, okay, in the execution role section. After that, we added Kafka as a trigger. Then we tested the setup by producing a message. So this is how we have successfully did setup of Amazon MSK as an event source for Lambda. That's it for this lecture. Thanks for watching the video.